What up, listeners? Welcome to Rice, sharing the Asian perspective on entertainment, sports, and trending topics. Today's main topic is going to be the Netflix movie. It's trending in the top 10 of Netflix right now. It is called The Half of It, right? Is that right?
Yep.
Guess?
The other half?
Yeah.
The other I think it's the half of it. I don't know.
Half
Okay.
of it.
What
a
start. I just clicked it on that.
And the reason why we've chosen this is because it has a female Asian lead, which seems to be quite popular on Netflix lately and quite mainstream, which is a very good development. On the show, we have Sebastian Chow.
Hello.
We've got Veronica Antipolo.
Hello.
We've got Gina Siva.
Hi.
And we've got Josh Yang.
Hi.
Cool. So let's just jump straight in. If you had to give the movie a one-word review, what would that word be? Let's put Gina on the spot first.
One word.
Yeah.
I would say it was good.
Oh, no. Okay, we'll come back to you because that's not that's disqualified. So we'll head over to Veronica and see if she does any better.
Comprehensive.
Okay. Let's go over to Josh.
I would say it's I feel like there's a better word than different, but it's like a better word to use because it's I'd say it's different.
Okay, let's go over to Sebastian. One word review.
Subversive. It kind of like
I was thinking
yes,
like that.
Yeah, that's because here's why. It is.
No. Just one.
I can't explain it. Just subversive.
No.
That's
just
it.
One word so far. We're gonna
Okay.
jump in. This is a preview. Let's call
Okay.
so people listen to the rest of the pod. You can't give away the cow.
Okay.
Just the milk so far.
Yeah, I was thinking along that line as well. Subversive.
Don't steal it. Don't you steal it, John.
Okay, and let's head back to Gina.
Deceiving. That's going to be my word.
Okay, and my word would be thoughtful. Okay. So I did see looks of judgment in there, but that is my word. Okay, so our first topic we'll go into is one thing I did notice about this movie was how Ellie, the main character, she grew up in a town where she was the only Asian in her entire high school, the only Asian basically in the town outside of her father. As we know, that is very common. I have a lot of friends who experience this growing up. And I'll sort of, instead of going to somebody directly, I would want to open it up to somebody to raise their hand if they went through this growing up where they were the only Asian kid. Okay, let's go over to Sebastian. How did it feel to be the only Asian kid, and how did that sort of play into your interpretation of the movie?
Well, there's definitely a lot of isolation in being the only Asian kid. A lot of slurs get thrown around. Usually not the right one. They have trouble finding out which they're. Once they find it, though, they won't let it go. It's a precious gem to them once they find it. And in this movie, they did not find the right slur. They said like choo choo train, and they made train sounds out of the back of a moving truck.
Chugga choo choo.
Yeah. And I understand why they might not want to put the real racial slurs in a Netflix like PG-13 movie. Was it PG-13? I forget the rating.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely would have bumped it up if you dropped some bombs in there.
Yeah, but was there anything in Ellie's experience that sort of triggered a past repressed, sad? Like, I'm really trying to dig in here. Let's.
Oh yeah, he's trying to take me apart. Like he's carving up a chicken. There's a lot of like the
basically what I'm asking
to want to overachieve
Okay.
but I didn't like relate to being a direct immigrant. I'm a little more removed than that.
Mm.
I'm like 2 generations apart from China. But whereas Ellie is, she was born in China in the movie.
Mm. Okay, cool.
And and they have like a language barrier thing. And I personally, much easier for me. Very easy for me. I wasn't in Squamish. I was in I was like an hour away from a town where many Asians lived. I just wasn't allowed to go there.
Oh, okay. Let's dig into that. So you were forcefully separated from your heritage. What was the reason?
That's dramatic.
I know.
The reason for that was like, well, all my Asian relatives were in Canada, and I was in Metro Detroit, and yeah, and there are pockets of Asian communities, but they were not close to me, and my parents were, they were working, and especially because when I was in high school, it was during like the depression of '08, right? So both my parents were working. Like I had I had school, I had a part-time job, and like you can't really go down and hang out at like try to find out where to learn how to play mahjong or ping pong at the rec center in Novi, Michigan.
Right.
I did go once, and I got wrecked by a white guy in like crazy colored track pants. Yeah. And then there was like a bunch of other Chinese people speaking Chinese, and I don't speak Chinese at all. So there's another element of like removal. Because when I see a group of Asian people, like I kind of like, oh, they're my people. I'm connecting, but it's not really. It's really surface level because I don't have any shared experience with like real Asian people.
Yeah, language would definitely be a barrier. I know growing up with my Asian friends, for sure, we treated people differently if they only spoke English, for sure. And Asians are pretty cruel. So let's go over to, now that I've forced Sebastian to relive his childhood trauma, let's head over to Veronica and see what kind of tears we can squeeze out of this life story.
Oh, God. I wasn't, it's not accurate. I wasn't the only Asian. I went to school with kids from the bridle path because my school was literally just by Post Road, and you'd cut through and it was bridle path. So no one knew what Filipino was because this was back in the early 80s. So I just lied and said I was Hawaiian because everyone kind of knew what Hawaiian was because Hawaiian punch and, skirts.
So punch is the best connection to Hawaii.
Yeah, that's as close as I got. And also too, like the same thing with racial slurs. They were always incorrect. And then I always felt like I was giving like an explanation that lasted too long, and they just didn't care. They just wanted to push me down, but I was like, no, but wait, get it right.
Yeah. And it feels kind of racist in itself to go into the etymology. And it's like, no, it's not zipperhead, because that's like in Vietnam when they would drive. And then it's like, well, that's kind of fucked up. I don't want to say that.
Exactly. And like, keep in mind, I'm like 8, 10. So I don't even know that much either. All I know is that you're calling me the wrong thing if you're trying to insult me.
And it kind of puts you on the back foot, and like you have to like summon forth some native pride and defend it, but you don't know any of that because
I don't know any of it.
You had to adopt that like from secondhand.
Exactly.
No.
There was one recess I remember I went around with my friends, and I was equating myself to toast and saying I was like lightly toasted. And so I went around calling everybody like, they're darker toasted or they're not even toasted.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, those could turn into different kinds of ethnic slurs real quick.
Well, yeah, because there was the one
Irish bread.
She came up to me, she's like, you can't go around calling people toast. She was East Indian. And I was like, but I'm brown too.
and isn't it kind of strange that people like inflections of like white culture in people who are not white, they have to justify it, or we have to justify it by like comparing ourselves to food. It's always food. It's like, I'm a banana or something like that. An Oreo. It's
I'm curry.
Why is it? Yeah.
And
Why is it
curry.
got to be food, man?
I don't know.
I mean-
You
because
can only understand me if you can eat me.
Well, white
Yeah.
people are crackers, so I mean, it's all kind of
Yeah.
it all comes full circle.
And the
All
name of
comes
this
full
show,
circle.
the name of the show is Rice. So we are also
Yeah,
the
food is
the
very
edible
very important to
podcast.
I
Yeah.
guess
Yeah, it's
everybody.
important to Asians. We're all about food.
Yeah, but it is
Yeah.
true that there's surprising numbers of fruit that like actually fit a lot of our descriptions. Like coconut, just perfectly for brown on the outside, white on the inside.
That's right.
Egg for white on the outside, yellow, and then banana, classic banana. So I think that should be what we should be looking at. Why are these fruits so, racist when they're in their creation?
I think it's the
And-
Dole
yeah.
Corporation. They're really racist.
It's the Dole Corporation. Yeah.
Wait, so in this movie, it wasn't just Ellie who was feeling isolated. It was her dad as well, as somebody who moved to the country. Where is Squamish? I don't even know where that is. Is that?
It was shot in New York. I don't think they ever really specified.
No.
I think
I-
they
I-
said go to Iowa or something. So
Oh.
maybe they're in Iowa.
Maybe that's
Mm.
part of it.
Oh.
Like it's in nowhere. Like you don't. It's like it's so in
Yeah.
the middle of nowhere. You can't even
I
know
think,
where it is.
yeah, the point is it's a small white town, I think.
Yeah.
Mm.
We all
It
got that.
Yeah.
actually really reminded me for a second there. I thought they were talking about Squamish in BC because
In
because
BC.
I'm from BC, right? So when I heard Squamish, is like, is that some kind of reference to Squamish? But no, it's very much supposed to be like an American setting.
Yeah.
Well, the one interesting thing that I found with them living in Squamish, and also with Ellie being the only Asian kid in her school, was that it was a temporary move, and it was supposed to lead to bigger things. Whereas I do find a lot of Asian parents, like first generation, when they move here, they actually purposefully choose the assimilation route. They want their kid to be the only Asian kid so that they do push away their past and adapt. And, they are coming from a good place because they feel like this is how their kid is going to adapt the most quickly. And I always put out the public service announcement to parents, no, that'll just traumatize them. Nobody wants to be the only thing of, like, I tell this story a lot, but there was my school was the opposite. We were all Asian and we had one white kid and we beat him up every day. Like, you do not, like, seriously, you do not want to be like that. Type of assimilation will not, make you fit in the country. It's just going to get you beat up. So I don't know if any parents are listening to this, but please save your children from this type of ridicule. And now
Save your children from vong. You will assault your
I
children.
will eat you up.
Yeah.
not me personally, but I will say, did I step in to help? No. Did I maybe stand around and laugh?
He's more of the manipulator behind the scenes. He's like, everybody, he's in the yard right now. Go get him.
Cheering on the side.
I'll pull out my phone and film it.
Bing, he's bribing. You kick him, you punch him.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so like the other option would be sort of what my parents did, which was, they forced me to honor my heritage in every way. Like, we weren't allowed to speak English at home. They're like, you'll learn when you're outside of this house, but in this house, you're not going to forget who you are. So, it was sort of, I don't know. There's definitely different ways, and I know parents are coming from a good place, but honestly, please do not put your kids through that trauma because it never ends well. Now, speaking of parents, back to the topic of Ellie's dad, an engineer coming to town, with a PhD, having to take like an entry level position because of his accent. And now, my parents, they obviously they came here, they had accents. My dad was a forest ranger, top of his class, went, was in the army. He came here, he had to take a laborer's job, sort of really rebuild from the ground up. How are your experiences or your parents' experiences? I know maybe it might be different for Sebastian because it doesn't sound like your parents were first generation, but anybody here had parents that had to adapt to learning the language on the fly?
Yeah, I definitely did. My mom was a teacher in Singapore, and then she came over here and it didn't really mean anything. So she had to go back to school, and she went and did, I think, a 2-year program in business at like Centennial or something like that, and then got a job with an insurance company. So totally different from being a teacher, right? But she had to do what she had to do to make money for the family. And my dad, when he came over, he actually has an incredible story. So it's going to be way too long for me to tell you now. But
No, tell
he
it.
did a lot of hopping around
Oh.
before he made it over to Canada. So he actually had to like run across the border and got caught by Border Patrol, and they put him in jail and stuff. And then he had to claim refugee status. And it was like, it's like a whole thing. But eventually he made his way on over actually to New York, and he was living in New York somewhere, not New York, but like the state. And then working as a busboy, just trying to make money to bring my mom over, because he came over first and my mom was still in Singapore. And that the reason why they couldn't settle in Singapore is because Singapore doesn't allow anybody to settle there. Like if you're a foreigner, you can't live there forever. You're not even, back then you weren't even allowed to marry Singaporeans. They had to go to Malaysia to get married.
Wow.
That's, my dad's from Sri Lanka. And so he was just a foreigner and they wouldn't allow it. And so, yeah, they made their way on over. Eventually, my mom came over to New York, met my dad there, and then they started a family, and my mom was pregnant. And then there was a lot of like crime and stuff going on. And my dad's like, you know what, it's not safe. So he made a few phone calls. He had friends living in Montreal. So went over, settled in Montreal. My sister was born. Then heard that there's a large Tamil community in Scarborough. So they moved over to Scarborough, and then that's when I was born. My brother was born, and I've been in Scarborough since. So
I love that you refer to it as Scarborough and not like Toronto.
Oh no, it's Scarborough, because Scarborough is where a large Asian community is, especially Tamils. Like we have a lot of Tamil people in Scarborough. And that was the reason why my dad came over. My dad actually worked his butt off in security jobs and whatever he could, put aside a bunch of money and opened up his business. And so he owned a market. So like, you know, when you see The Simpsons and they're all like Apu and stuff like that. Yeah, like my dad owned a market. And so anytime I see that stereotypical thing, I'm like, oh, fuck you guys. You know? Yeah, totally. My dad had a store and he was very proud of it. And I was proud of him too, because he worked his butt off to get it. And he every day he was at that store 10 o'clock to 10 o'clock.
Wow.
Oh, and how about you, Josh? How were your parents? Did they immigrate here, or has your family been here for generations?
Yeah, no, they immigrated in 94. So I was born in Beijing, but they probably came in 93, because I didn't come over until I was 2.5. So when I was like one-ish, my dad came over to start his PhD over here. And then my mom came over a little bit afterwards to set things up. And then I actually lived with my grandparents from like 1.5 to 2.5, and then came here when everything was ready.
Cool. And so
I grew up with my grandparents too. So it was like completely, I was immersed in Filipino culture, except they wanted me to learn how to speak English specifically because they thought that would slow me down and deter me.
Deter you from
learning anything, because they didn't speak English. Well, you know what? They spoke better English than they thought. Swearing anyways. And they were really afraid that I would not be able to assimilate, especially in the neighborhood that we were in. So I remember them specifically telling me, like, you have to speak English at home. And they would speak to me in not in Tagalog, even in 2 different dialects. So I haven't retained any language, any dialect.
Oh, so you are 100% English native speaker, and that's
yeah. Oh. And French. I can speak French, which is useless to my family.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. My parents taught me Tamil at home when I was a baby, and then up until I was a toddler, I only spoke Tamil. And I have a sister who's 6 years older than me, and I would always tag along and be like, oh, Akka, which means big sister. Be like, Akka, please speak in Tamil. Please speak in Tamil. I don't know what you're saying. And I was that like little loser kid that couldn't speak any English, just wanted to be a part of things. Yeah.
Cool. And how do you feel your parents were treated with their accents, and were they able to to integrate into society. I know maybe with Josh, you said your one of your parents was taking a PhD. Maybe in academic circles, is it maybe a little bit easier than say in like, you know, outside of the academic world, or is it just equally as awful?
I'm not too sure actually, in terms of like his exact experiences, but I did get a sense that obviously when you're kind of the exchange or the foreign student or the foreign PhD person coming in here, there's going to be culture shock. You're not going to be able to immediately relate to everybody in terms of how the academic environment is set up, but like in terms of what he had to do to get to where he is and be able to like teach like as a professor and get his English up to that level, like he is definitely almost like a daily process where he not only has to like constantly listen to like different radio programs or like English language programs just to make sure that it's constantly updating his vocabulary and stuff. So even until now, like I would say his English is very good, like good enough to be an academic, but I wouldn't say is like it's perfect. And similarly for like my mom, I think some immigrant parents who come here, it's a lot tougher and like it can take much longer. And sometimes like your English language skills will only get to a certain level, and like they might only be able to improve to a little bit to a certain point, and then over time it's like just however much English you can get by with you use. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. Like with my parents, my mom, she evolved her English a little bit more quickly because she had to take care of like the household bills and dealing with the banks, different things like that. Whereas my dad had less of those household duties, so it's taking like a lot longer to you know, and his English even now like 35 years later isn't say as comfortable as my mom. So it's definitely, I do think when you move somewhere as an adult, because they were I think like definitely in their 30s by then, it's difficult because, you know, I do get mad when people, you know, look at my parents or people like my parents and they're like, you've been here for 30 years. Why can't you just, you know, learn the language and all this stuff? Like, honestly, after 30, it is not easy. Like it is not easy to rewire your brain. And let's go over
I
to.
think it also has to do with like, not only is it not easy, but when people try, they're made fun of. You know, and how that doesn't feel good. We don't learn that way. You know, it doesn't make you want to be brave and keep trying again because you're afraid that anytime you try to speak English, people are just going to yell at you, because that's the thing. When they don't understand you, they just raise their voice because they think you're deaf all of a sudden. And they'll just be like, yeah, I don't know what you're saying. Or they'll straight up say to their face, learn English. So it's not very nice. So why would I go talk to people when I can't really communicate with them? I might as well just stay with my own community and speak to them because they understand me and they're not going to talk to me like that. Right. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I remember my grandmother used to talk about people all of the time to my aunt, and I would be like, they can tell that you're talking about them. Like they can tell by the intonation of your voice. And she'd be like, nah.
Now, I know, I think everybody else in the call is multilingual, right?
Mm-hmm. I am. Yep.
Yeah. Have you ever caught somebody who was like talking trash about you in another language and thought you didn't speak it, and then called them out
the time,
and you totally wrecked them because
the
you're like, hey, I understand that language. You're rude.
In my set,
then they go to hell.
About it. Yeah, in my set, I talk about it. Filipinos, my hair, I was darker when I was younger. And my hair is actually curlier than this, but they never knew I was Filipino. So I'd go to gathering. I was on the TTC everywhere, and they'd start talking about me in Tagalog, and I'd have to be like, I can understand you. And then they would say to me, they'd start talking in English, and they'd be like, how did you learn the language? It's like, because I'm Filipino. And they'd be like, who's Filipino, your dad or your mom? I'm like, both of them. And they'd be like, are you sure? Pretty sure.
Yeah, you know, the funny thing with me is, I don't know, like the people I grew up with, they didn't really try and mask that they were talking about somebody. They would just like flat out
Just openly point to them.
Yeah, they
That guy.
they had no shame. They didn't care. In fact, they were probably happy if you could understand, because then they wouldn't have to translate it for you.
Then the translate it, so they'll talk shit about somebody else, and then like have somebody go over there and interpret the trash talk to them.
Yeah, like sometimes they would try and translate it themselves. They'd be like, "Oh, white guy, ugly," or something. Like they just, they just sort of say it. Like they had no shame. They just would, And if they didn't think you spoke the language, they would attempt to, because they wanted you to know. Those are. It was fun times growing up.
Yeah.
I don't know
I've
if
had
this is.
experiences with like Tamil guys where they're, especially in my high school, I don't know, people just didn't really realize I was Tamil. They would just be like, oh, she's Guyanese. And that was basically it. And I'm like, whatever. I'm not going to stand around fighting each one of you to be like, I'm actually Tamil. It's just, you think what you want. I'm here to go to school. I could care less. I remember one time I was walking down the hallway and there was a group of Tamil guys. And this one guy's like, hey, like, look at her over there. And this is all happening in Tamil. And I could hear it. And then the one guy's like, who, her? And he's like, yeah, she's cute. Don't you think? Like, I should try talking to her. And then he was like, no, man, she's Guyanese. Leave her alone. And he's like, oh, for real?
Guyanese.
And then it was just like that. So what am I going to do? Be like, actually, I am Tamil. Excuse me, please hit on me. Like, I was just like, whatever. I just left it.
Yeah.
Right? What am I supposed to do?
So off of, similar to the same topic on accents, but let's lighten up the mood a little bit. Like accents, a lot of accents are considered sexy, but Asian accents generally aren't put into that category.
I think it's just tonal usually.
Is it tonal, or have we been conditioned? Because I actually do find a touch of a Mandarin accent pretty sexy.
Oh.
Are there any Asian accents that you would like to represent as sexy to try and change this narrative? Or have you bought into what society tells you and you believe the lies that Asian accents aren't sexy? This is a very loaded question.
I've been let
So
in.
loaded.
I'm a sheep. I've been outed as a sheep.
Okay.
Me, I don't know where I fit in on that because I don't find, like, you know how people think British accents are so hot
Yeah.
and things like that? I don't care for that. I think it's the weirdest
Oh.
thing. I hate British accents. I can't lie. When I hear one, I'm just like, oh my God, this voice again.
This voice again.
Yes, I'm so sick of this
Not
voice.
again.
Get it out of here.
I don't know. I must have something like
Gosh.
internally deep
going
down
on?
there somewhere. Somebody
Oh.
must have pissed me off when I was a kid because I really don't like it. I hate hearing it.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Do you think that the Filipino accent is very sexy? I don't know.
I don't really think any accents are sexy, to be honest. I think it's more about what people say. I'm not really an accent person. I'm not like, oh my God, that guy's hot because of his accent. I don't care.
I had an ex-boyfriend tell me that Tagalog to him sounds like two chickens fighting. Like,
Oh.
Oh no.
So I don't think that's sexy. Yeah.
I mean,
There's got to be a better way to say that if you feel that way.
Is there, are there accents that you guys do find sexy? I know I sort of opened up sort of making fun of you if you had this belief, but
Like Asian?
no, any accent that you are attracted to. Be
Did you say
brave.
Trini?
No,
I don't-
but
no, he said any accents.
Oh,
Any accents.
I thought you said.
People think French accents are hot.
What did you think
Oh.
he said?
I don't know. I thought you were being specific, like Trini. I was like, why Trini?
hey, Trini accents are cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, listen, I know I sort of killed this question by making fun of you beforehand if you were to answer
No,
yes.
I'm never opening up again, Vaughn.
But what? Oh, or maybe this. Does anybody on this podcast, did you guys like maybe change your Siri to a different accent because you found it sexy? Do you like, I've got a lot of, I'll say quote unquote, bougie stuck up friends who will change their Siri to a British voice anytime I have
Wow.
a friend who's not British but has a British Siri or Amazon Alexa or GPS, I'm just like, wow, this person just wants. It's the same type of people who come up and tell you that they're like 2000th in line for like the England throne because they just
Oh,
want to be. Yeah, because they want to be associated with the royal blood, and I don't know. Honestly, I just find if you're not English and you just
we're
love
gatekeeping
this
the Siri
accent.
now.
Hey, listen, my GPS accent has been turned on to Homer Simpson, so I'm not sure what that says about me. But
Oh wow! I didn't even
I
know they
have a
had that
friend.
option.
yeah,
I have a friend who's
You can get it in Snoop
their
Dogg,
GPS
too, I
sounds like the boy band. But when I heard it, I was like, "Is this an Indian man? Like, why is this like this?"
Yeah, see, I would be a bit hesitant to make it British, because what if I need to what if I get screwed over by some like grammatical error? Like I'm like, Siri, take me to, where's the nearest hospital? Or like, how do I get to the hospital? And then Siri's like, don't you mean, where's the, like, how do I get to hospital? Where's the? Like, you don't say that. It's, there's like pronunciation differences. I know that got a little weird.
Okay, so just
when I'm driving, like I get stressed out,
Yeah.
And I don't want to like, oh, why are you saying words like that? Siri, you bitch. Stop it.
Okay, so this was supposed to be a movie review. I know we got a little bit off topic.
What?
So
Well, I think the movie does a very good job in terms of like talking about themes relating to communication, right? Because you have the communication between Ellie and her dad, then you have the communication between Ellie and the rest of the kids in school, and then like the central theme between Ellie helping the guy communicate to Aster, the apple of their eyes, and like he isn't able to communicate the way he wants to, so he's using her to communicate for him. I think in terms of that, it does a very good job of describing different levels and seeing them play out. I think it did a very good job in terms of the relationship between Ellie and her dad. Like when she spoke Mandarin, it wasn't the greatest pronunciation, but then it makes a lot of sense within the character because she wouldn't have any other mediums to really learn a better version of the Mandarin accent. Her dad's accent was perfect. It was authentic, and like everything about his conversations and everything seemed very, very on point to me. I think terms of learning like the language and how you learn it, what kind of mediums you learn is very important. I would say my Mandarin's pretty decent for pronunciation wise in terms of like growing up in Canada. A lot of different immigrant kids, like they would have no idea how to pronounce it, or like they'd have a similar pronunciation like Ellie's. It's a little cluttered, it's a little clunky. But I think a lot of that was due to just me and my family watching Chinese dramas almost every day, whether it's like the old in Canada is like the old Talent Vision. They would have some kind of Chinese drama at like 4:00 or 7:00, and I remember watching that all the time. And then that was my most accurate reference to be able to like at least pronounce with a decent accent. So I think that isolation that she was in was definitely tough, and it kind of came out through her Mandarin as well.
Goddamn, what a cogent and like so on point series of thoughts. Like you got fed the topic line like hours ahead and you just wrote it. That was so good.
I mean, that's what I kind of liked about the film. There's a lot of different points where like you could see it, you could make the connections between like a lot of the themes that they put out in there. And I mean, like the communication element, I thought I didn't really think of it until now as we were talking a bit more about like immigrant communication and that relationship, and then that was kind of the central issue with the film apparently. Yeah.
How did you all feel when the father spoke to Paul in his language? Like, do you remember that scene when they're just standing there and then he just starts speaking in his language? And I'm like, wait, can Paul understand?
That was really funny.
I thought that was, I mean, I guess the point was the sentiment and how he was speaking. But I thought, what if he was a bad communicator and he spoke like in a monotone? Then poor Paul would be lost.
You know,
Paul's
character. Oh,
no, go ahead.
Paul's character has some like weird like emotional connection elements. Like he's kind of like a combination of like Waterboy from Adam Sandler's Waterboy and Forrest Gump. Like he's just a complete idiot who's like really heartfelt. He's like, I just like sausages.
Yeah, he had to look up plagiarism. He
He's-
said he looked
Yeah.
up the word plagiarism.
He's like,
Yeah.
I love this girl, and then she's like, do you know what that means? He's like, no, I love
No.
this girl.
Yeah,
But he tried.
Yeah, he tries though.
Yeah.
He tries though.
He
Yeah.
tried.
yeah, it's sort of going on that same topic about the portrayal of the high school kids, not just, the portrayal of an Asian lead in high school, but also the portrayal of a jock, also the portrayal of, the quote unquote hot girl from school. I think it was you, Sebastian, who sort of had your one word review as subversion. Do you want to get a bit more into that? Do you think that they
Yes.
that they subverted tropes?
So it's a bit subverted in the way that is really in the meta of Netflix's current development patterns, which is very much leaning like pro LGBT and pro Asian, just like these things which were previously merit their own categories for some reason, just because they're icky to the normal
Mhm.
viewer. Now they're bleeding into now it's regular, and that's good. But it tried to it subverted many things, like the how Aster, like how now Ellie's now after Aster too, right?
Mm.
Like it's a surprise. Ooh, it's a surprise. Now she's gay. It's a surprise.
I
Yeah.
knew
She was gay
within
the whole
2
time.
seconds. Like right away, I'm like, this
Yeah.
girl loves this girl. I just
Yeah.
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah.
Like the book, like the immediate call out on the, it's like you can't get away with shit. Like on my terms, you can't quote stuff from television. I know that. In the first letter,
Yeah, well, one
It's
part
like you
that
got to have the back and forth, right?
one part that I like that they subverted was that it wasn't a clean ending, and that they were just like
Yeah.
really confused, and I was like, that's kind of high school. Like these big love stories that sort of complete their arc. I don't know a single couple in high school that finished high school with a completed arc. Like you left high school confused. You're like, I don't know if I like you. I don't know if I'm gay. I don't know if, maybe I'm reliving my own trauma because my first 2 boyfriends turned straight and are married to women now. So for me, high school was all about total confusion. So when they ended on like, I don't really know. I
Yeah.
might have thought about it, but who knows? How about thoughts from you, Josh, on that topic?
Yeah, that was I was thinking along the same lines of like subverting how it does a good job of taking what you would assume is your classic relationship triangle, is like the guy wants to get the girl, who the guy is like either dweebish or nerdy, or just not within the same level as the object, which is the girl. But then in the end, it's like, oh, whoever helps them get to it is like suddenly realize, oh, this is the girl that he's actually into. And then I remember there's a really good scene where, okay, this might be spoiler. Yeah, there's definitely a spoiler.
I think we're well past that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. But there was this one scene where it actually kind of really came to a tipping point where it's like the guy realizes he likes Ellie. He goes in for the kiss with Ellie, not knowing that Ellie was actually into Aster, and then Aster was already kind of dating the guy at that point, and it was
King Mudripper.
Yeah. What's his name again?
King Mutter.
No. Like
It's like Trig?
She was
Trig.
the Paul is Paul, right?
Oh yeah, Paul. Yeah.
They had
Yeah.
kissed. They had kissed a
Yeah.
couple of times. So,
So
I
they
don't
had
think they were
kissed-
actually in a relationship. Yeah.
So she was under the impression that Paul was the guy for her on an intellectual level, so she was actually into him. And then she also had that scene where they established a bit of a connection between her and Ellie. And there was that moment where when Paul kissed Ellie, she turned him down. And then when Aster came in and saw that whole thing, it was an interesting reveal, because I noticed that in a lot of other stuff you see before, when that kind of 3-way reveal or twist happens, it's usually 2 people are like negatively affected, one person isn't really negatively affected, because that's kind of like what they wanted. But in that scene, all 3 of them got fucked. Like the guy got turned down by Ellie, who he thought was into her. Ellie got like completely destroyed because she thought she hurt Aster, and then Aster got knocked out because she thought this guy was kissing this new friend of hers, and she bonded with her on a friendship level. So that was something I noticed where like it subverted everything, because all the characters in that moment were like impacted with that one scene where normally like it would just be your classic, oh, I got shocked, and then one person is happy about it, one person is confused about it or whatever. So like that was one thing I noticed. And then all throughout it really did kind of play into how you would imagine, King Mutter. Like that's supposed to be the stereotypical guy who's like the main focus of you
At a big truck.
Yeah, of your
Impressive.
general, right? Where like you think that everything revolves around him, and he thinks everything revolves about him, but the entire story plays out without him being any focal point. So that I think that's a good element of how they subverted that narrative generally, and I think the whole thing at least does a good job of separating itself from the regurgitated stories that you always see in Hollywood.
Yeah, let's go ahead, Sebastian.
Yeah, I was gonna talk a little bit on what you mentioned with the like the intrigue, because it seemed like there's a lot of struggle to introduce intrigue, like the love triangle stuff, in a way that's like not played out. Like this was pretty not played out. This is pretty fresh, but also to make things not just dissemble into like, and everyone just walks away going like, what the fuck just happened? Which this one did, but it kind of makes sense because of the whole high school thing. But the whole love triangle thing, it's been so well explored that when like to introduce intrigue, usually it just like everybody falls apart.
My one thing with that scene, Josh, that you talked about, when he kisses Ellie, I was like, and then she was concerned about Aster. I was like, did you not get it yet, Paul? Are you not connecting? I was like, it's so it was obvious like how many scenes ago, but it should have been obvious now, Paul.
But that's what bothered me about that scene, because he leaned in for a kiss and then she was like, no, what are you doing? And instead of being like, oh, she thinks we're just friends, like I overstepped, he was like, oh, you're not into me? You must be gay. Like it just seemed like she didn't say I'm gay. So why is he just like, oh, you're gay? Okay, it's a sin. Like, excuse me, just because I didn't make out with you doesn't necessarily mean I'm
if you don't want
gay,
the sausage
like,
boy. I don't, it's the only option.
I think they did an interesting way of like letting that play out, because there was that one moment before when when Ellie started describing Aster to him, where he's like, that should have been the moment, right, where he realized that she's actually into him. But that went over his head. It almost took Ellie shutting him down and being hurt when she saw Aster seeing them for him to realize it. So I think that kind of helped a little bit, but like his response to that though was really bad. That was like that was such an asshole response. That's like went biblical on her, which
he came around, okay.
Give the sausage taco guy a break.
But let's be real here, a taco sausage would be awful.
Would it though? I was starting to question by the end of it. I was like, maybe it's good.
You know what I want in my tacos? Intestine, and less like taco.
No, but I kind of feel like when you put the sausage in a taco, then you can add the toppings to it.
It's putting the taco in, like if you put the taco
like
in
a hot
sausage,
dog.
like ground
taco seasoning.
A hot dog
No,
watching your weight, you're like, oh, I'll have
like if you chop up a sausage and put it in a taco, that's a bit different. Still a negative.
No, the part I saw, and I know there were different versions of the sausages, but the one I liked was when they basically just replaced the hot dog bun with a hard taco shell.
Yes.
And for me, I'm like, oh, that would work, because I actually don't usually eat the hot dog bun anyway, but I would probably eat a taco because it's made out of corn instead of regular gluten. So I was like, I would put my toppings and stuff in a taco shell and then wrap it around a hot dog.
My thing is like, I either have hot dogs or like sausages, but no buns.
Yes.
But then we'll always have like a taco kit, so
you can't have like a solid piece in the taco. That's against the rules. Like a big piece, a big long continuous sausage when everything else is like loose and comes apart in every bite, but the sausage is continuous.
Think outside the bun.
This is the sin.
So you want it to be a cut up sausage. Like if you cut up the sausage,
that's much
you'd be
more
satisfied.
acceptable.
Or
That's
no
much more
casing.
acceptable.
No casing.
That's
No
just
sausage
a
casing.
the best
just a
option.
loose hot dog, isn't
Then
it?
it's just a loose,
Degenerate it
a
entirely into
loose
ground
hot
beef.
dog.
Yeah, because it's not in a bun like the
Just a
bun.
boiled
It's just
hot
a
dog, unseasoned, just
tortilla.
Wow.
rolled around
I
in your
thought-
taco.
I thought maybe you were slut shaming the hot dog. You're like a loose hot dog.
No, it's like it's because it's just covered by a thin layer of tortilla. It's not like
Yeah,
a thing
yeah.
as a bun.
I'm
But
getting
it would
nauseous
have
just
to be-
listening to this.
It would
This
have to
is
be a hard
disgusting.
shell. It would have to be a hard shell, not a. What's the
Ugh.
point? Yeah.
I kind
I
of
guess
feel
so.
like that the conversation is going toward food because I booked this podcast during dinner hour, and we're probably all a little bit hungry.
Yeah.
So let's.
Ooh, there
I thought this was really getting somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of food, there was one moment I really liked where they had the dad making dumplings, so that they could pack on the trip for Ellie to go to Iowa,
The
go to
18
wherever.
meals.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That is super Asian.
Asian?
I love that they
Yeah.
put that in there because that's just the
Yeah.
immigrant mentality. It's like,
Yeah.
what? You don't have to go out and buy. Don't spend money on buying it. I can make it. I'll make it for you. Pack it up in container. Eat it on your way there. It's like home cooking, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I thought
I
that was
love
a
that
nice touch.
scene. I love that it was like permission almost without really giving permission, but like no, like I
Yeah.
want you to go. I
Yeah.
want better for you. I came
Yeah.
here for you to be more like your mom, not like me. Please
Mm.
go. And then he's making all this food for her, and it's like, okay, how do you say no to that?
Oh.
That's very cultural too. Where
Mm.
I feel like Asians we're not going to speak our feelings, but we're going to show you some other way. And if you don't
Oh,
pick
yeah.
up on it,
Yeah, I think
And
definitely.
you'll go to therapy for the rest of your life.
exactly.
It's like I'll beat you at night, but I'll make you a lunchbox in the morning.
Exactly.
Well,
and I love you.
Well, you know the one thing is with communication and sort of what you're talking about, like Asians might not say it. Actually, so I had a couple white boyfriends earlier in my life, and one thing I did have to teach them is that nonverbal communication is really important to like basically to non-white people. Like there's not because my white boyfriends are always taught, you know, that stupid saying that I wish they would like stop teaching white kids, which is like don't assume because it makes an ass out of you and me. But like where I grew up, it's like no, you have to assume because if I'm family, if I have to say it and like you don't know me any better than a stranger where I have to spell it out word for word, then why are we even family? Like there's an expectation to be able to read people, and sometimes you're wrong, but that's what I was telling them. I was like, I'm not going to spell it out every time because
That's
if
true.
we've been together for 2 years, you better make assumptions and you should be right most of the time. So I do think there's a big communication gap there. One thing sort of jumping on to what Josh said about how that was his favorite thing. Do you guys want to each take a turn of what your favorite thing of the movie was? Let's go to Veronica first.
I do like that it was different from the usual teen movie. I like that all the characters, Alice Wu obviously tried to add some depth to the characters. And I think I said that the jock, even though he was, you know, a simple, supposed to be a dumb jock, she did try to, you know, the fact that he tried, I don't think I've ever seen that in any other teen movie. It's been very stereotypical. So I do like that there was depth to those three characters, even the dad. Like there was just depth there that I don't think I've seen in other teen movies. It was very angsty though. I was like, oh God, get a drink.
Yeah. Over to you, Gina. What was your favorite aspect of the movie?
Well, my favorite would have been when the dad was packing her food because that was just relatable to me. That's kind of who my dad has been for me. Like whenever I go somewhere or whatever I'm doing, even through this pandemic, he'll be texting me like, oh, I cooked or your mom cooked, come by, and they'll leave food on the porch for me because they think I'm starving. I don't know. So definitely that was my favorite. But I really liked when you could see Ellie in that station, like that train station, and she was just by herself. I don't know, something about it was just kind of refreshing because I felt like she was just doing so much for other people. And even though that's a scene where she's doing again for her dad, it's still like a moment for her to be alone, sort of. I don't know. I just appreciated it. I think I like the view. And it was kind of cool that she's just chilling in a box, you know, doing her job twice a day.
And how about you, Sebastian?
Definitely the 5 strokes scene where they
What?
they painted graffiti.
Oh,
And they made
Forgot about
made something great together. And then some guy just came over and sprayed it all blue because they were defacing his property.
I would say my favorite thing, and this kind of goes to subversion of expectations as well, which is that, you know, generally I don't like when movies only have one Asian character or one Asian, because generally they're like the side character. But if you're going to have one Asian character and they're the main character, then I'm like, okay, let's go to that. And I liked how all the white people just sort of revolved around her world. But it was like her story. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'll make an exception there. You could have just one Asian if it all revolves around them, and they're not just some like weird geeky character who just sort of jumps in for, you know, to be made fun of and then to leave. Now, you know, at the end of the movie, there's a lot of plot threads left open. So it kind of, you know, and obviously it was trending in the top 10 in Netflix. So the immediate question is, you know, what are your feelings about a sequel? Do you want a sequel, or do you think this is kind of resolved? Would you revisit these characters? Let's go to, I know we've got people shaking their heads, but for drama, let's go over to Josh, who is giving us a poker face right now.
Oh, that's what I wanted. I wanted to do a poker face so you'd have to come to me. Oh, it's all planned. It's all planned ahead. I was thinking it would be nice to follow the path of Ellie, her as a character. Like if she's in like university, like you could kind of maybe explore a little bit more of her experiences, maybe like coming out to her dad, because that was the thing that I noticed. That wasn't resolved between her and her dad. That wasn't the communication issue. I think the communication issue was her and her dad in relation to everybody's feelings about her mom passing. So I think it'd be interesting to see Ellie's character in that conversation, because I think that's by itself is a tough thing for like an immigrant family to deal with, to kind of understand the differences of that within like your old country like mentality. I think that's an interesting path it could take. But in terms of having her like kind of come back and retread with the same characters, I think that story's pretty much done. I'm coming back to that in any point would just kind of ruin the effectiveness of the first movie. But like I just like the Ellie character so much because the way they also put her arc, like she was the studious Asian, unassuming Asian kid with like a ponytail, you know, glasses, like you don't think much of her. And they didn't change her outer appearance to the end of the film. They didn't like doll her up. She suddenly letting her hair down, wearing makeup, no glasses, contacts, that wasn't the physical transformation, but they just made her more confident. Like she was still wearing the ponytail and everything like that. She didn't really change the way she dressed too much, but there was a difference in like how she portrayed herself towards the end of the film. I think that's really important because you don't see that character much. Like, and I think a lot of immigrant kids would relate to that a lot more because that's who they were. They were the studious kid, unassuming. Like it's not easy to suddenly transform to what everybody thinks is, you know, a dolled up accepted version of themselves. So I think that was an interesting thing, and that just makes that character, I think, more interesting than the rest of it. So long answer short, like I think it'd be interesting for the Ellie character to be discovered a bit more, but the original plot of the movie I think is final. It's done.
Okay, so now let's head over to
Yeah.
Veronica, who's shaking her head. Let's see if Josh's very convincing argument has
No.
changed Veronica's mind.
No. I mean, did she really change? The only thing she changed is she ran and she gave her a kiss. Like, that's not much of a change. And also, too, who watched Degrassi Junior High when they went to college? Nobody. Who watched Joey when he left Friends? Nobody. I don't care. That's the story.
I watched.
Oh, okay. Well,
Saved by the Bell, the college years.
2 seasons.
that's it. Well, because you like Ellie, but I feel like I like the undoneness of it, and I don't really need to know more about you, Ellie. I mean, maybe the one thing is I'd like to see. I do agree, kind of, with what you're saying with her and her dad.
Yeah,
I feel like her dad was a minor character who could have. I felt like there was something more there, and I was like, I'd kind of be interested in his little side story.
Right.
But otherwise, I'm like, I'm done with you, Ellie and Aster.
Okay, let's go over to he's raring to go. Let's go over to Sebastian.
It's a lot like it reminded me a little bit of a Marriage Story, that Adam Driver movie where he was getting divorced. This is a spoiler for that as well. But because there's a bunch of chaos, everyone's angry, like there's a bunch of conflict, and then it all just falls apart. It's kind of realistic. Like everybody, after the chaos happens, everybody just looks around and go like, I guess we just leave now. Guess I'm going to college. And I would not watch a sequel because like, oh, what? She's going to come back and then Aster is different. She's like, yeah, I wasn't really planning this out that far. It turns out I was a child then, and I didn't even want to come back to Squamish, but then I guess we both failed in our respective fields, and now we're just back home in Squamish.
Yeah.
I guess that's the sequel. Or they serendipitously meet in the big city of I don't know, where did they go? Like
she went to Iowa.
She went to Iowa.
Grinnell,
the big city.
Grinnell College.
Grinnell College.
Yeah,
I wasn't
living it up in the
heard
big
much of it.
leagues. No, they. I don't know. If I had to guess what happens next, they probably move on and forget about each other mostly.
Yeah.
They'd be like, oh yeah,
that's the
happened.
most realistic. I feel like that would be the most realistic, ending to that. Like, sure, they kiss, but it's like it doesn't make sense for that to last 3 years, 4 years in the future.
Oh, they're like 40 and they meet each other on Facebook.
Yeah,
but that's realistic right there.
How you doing? Had a couple kids.
I don't want to see
got
this.
fat. Yeah, me too.
True.
I don't want to see this continue.
No,
I don't. I've seen what I've seen and I've had enough. I think. So I do like Ellie. Don't get me wrong, I like Ellie, but
so
she's
negative.
like a nerd and she's gone to school. So what? I'm gonna watch this nerd at school. I just think that like she's gonna go and she's gonna figure herself out. And I think that was the beginning of her exploring and understanding her feelings. And that Aster character has to do that too, but she was boring the whole time. So I don't want to see her, definitely. And I don't want to see Ellie come back to this lame town that she's in. It's so boring. And she's the only Chinese person, and she's also exploring herself, and they seem to be hella churchy. So like, I don't want that for her. I want her to move on, do better things. I want the dad to call and be like, oh, okay, you know what? I'm going to get a job where you're at.
Yeah.
And I want them
sequel
to
is
be together.
Dad gets a job. The end.
And just move on up. I want him to flourish because he's intelligent himself. So I want that for them.
They already set up the perfect sequel title though. Like, you could just call it the other half of it. Yeah, the other half of it. And then that would just be like perfect. They set it up, but
Josh, that's a sin what you did right there.
Hey, you know what? I put 2 and 2 together. I put one half together with the other half.
That's not 2 and 2. That's 0.5 and 0.5, my man.
2 separate, but I mean 2 separate objects. You put it. That's a whole nother thing. Anyways,
the other half.
The other half of it.
Okay, so let's just wrap this up with everybody giving a 1-word recommendation of would you recommend let's say if it was your best friend and you know your friend, if you recommend something, so that type of friend who's like, don't waste my time. So it's like somebody really counting on you. Would you say, yes, this is a good movie to watch, or no? Let's go to Veronica first.
I mean,
1 word.
Sure.
Oh,
Okay, let's
it's so
Sure.
lukewarm.
Oh my word.
So
let's
lukewarm.
let's go over to Josh.
I would 100%. I would recommend it. Okay,
Okay.
that's 100%.
So many words.
Is the 100%. That's
It's 3
Just a
words.
100 emoji.
yeah. 100 / underneath.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'd
let's
recommend.
let's go to Gina.
I'd say maybe.
Maybe. Okay. And now let's close it out with somebody with a strong opinion in Sebastian.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Like if you feel like it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like if you're bored and you have
Yeah.
nothing else to watch
Yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's better than
sure.
cats.
Maybe
Yeah.
But
100%.
my word to describe this in the beginning was deceiving, and I'm just kind of mad that in the beginning there was a disclaimer like this is not a love story, and then it ended up being a love story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
So
It's like this is.
It was
not a
definitely a
happy
love
ending
story.
Is what it meant.
Yeah.
they should have
I
said
don't-
not a typical love story or something. I don't know, but they lied.
There's definitely a bit of reticence to recommending to somebody something that ends with it falling apart because they'd be like that left me unsatisfied. I'm like, well, that's the
beginning-
point artistically.
The beginning of the movie, they did preface by saying this is not a love story.
They lied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They did preface it.
My recommendation would be yes, mainly because it's okay enough, but I want them to make more Asian-led films.
Am I the
so
only one who liked it?
I think
I
so.
liked it.
No,
I liked
I
it.
liked it.
Listen, we said
Everybody-
nobody said I recommend that you not watch it. No one
Right.
said
No,
that.
Fair.
no.
So
That's
these
fair.
are all
That's right.
positive
Yeah.
reviews.
Exactly.
Yes.
I
please-
liked it.
Also,
Neutral
they
positive is
include
still
stalking.
positive.
Yeah.
Yeah, what was that,
Yeah.
Gina?
There was a scene where they were like stalking that girl. So
Yeah.
there's some things about the
Okay.
film that just didn't really sit
Like the
right
first
with
half of
me.
the
Where I'm
film.
like, what are you guys doing? You know, the whole everything was deceiving about it. Ellie was texting for Paul, and Aster's all like, "Oh, you know,
Yeah.
thinking it's Paul." Like, it was a lot of things that are like, "Don't do
True.
that." That's
Yeah,
not
that is
right.
that is
It's not
very
recommending that you
intimate.
Listen,
Yeah.
they all failed, so that's the lesson.
Right.
And that
Oh.
scene where she's in the pickup truck, Ellie's in the pickup truck texting.
Oh,
and they're
yeah.
like, how did you not notice her?
Yeah.
She's watching you.
And
It's just-
why isn't Aster looking up to see if what's his face is texting? I didn't understand
Yeah.
that.
And Doofus wasn't even texting.
Doofus
So
wasn't
That's true.
texting.
Listen, is it called stalking or reconnaissance? Because that's the real distinction.
No, they
Mhm.
stalked her in the
It's
store.
stalking.
They were like behind the
Research?
shelves, like,
Yeah.
Excuse
yeah.
me, intelligent
Yeah.
people do research.
Well,
well,
Reconnaissance.
I
Have a
think a
full
line was
report.
crossed. So,
Yeah. That
especially
was
when they were
deep
watching
research.
her in like eat dinner with her family and they're like peeping. That was too much.
Are you
shit,
sure
yeah.
you don't want to change your recommendation to
that.
no?
You know?
This is
still
sounding
think,
like a no.
We're all on
Are we-
quarantine and there's nothing else to do, so
Yeah.
give it a watch and
Yeah.
then get the views up so more
Yeah.
Asian shows come onto Netflix. I want to see more Asian characters.
Yeah, my
I'm
Racially
recommend.
One
biased in
story.
favor of this movie.
I
Honestly-
I think definitely, but how much is the question?
yeah.
I say,
I think it's a great, it's a well done film. So I think
It
in terms
is.
of quality,
Yeah.
it is.
It
But I
is,
mean, like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It was too much introspection for me. I was like, it's like for me, it's like Adele. I'm like,
Like,
yeah,
Jesus,
I
when
kind
are
of
they, when are they gonna punch
enjoy.
people? Okay.
Yeah, I'm like, I enjoy the music, but I'm like, I have to be in a mood, and I kind of want to cut myself after. So I was like,
well,
Oh, wow.
that took
Wow.
a
The last
That
few
took
minutes
a
of the
real
podcast are
swerve.
Crazy.
that I'm not sure we have enough time to go into, but well noted, Veronica. She, for the listener, she is quarantined with a child,
7-year-old,
so
yeah.
that with Mother's Day coming up, so that's a lot on her plate. So
Send
I'll
me
just
the
leave it there.
I've seen you all in group therapy this week.
I thought
right?
this was a group therapy. But okay, so just closing off, if everybody wants to give a little bit shout out of what their next project is, how we can reach you, and for those listeners, if you don't quite make out what they're saying, we will have their contact information in the show notes. So let's start off with Josh.
You can follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and maybe YouTube. I don't know. I might start putting clips up there at Josh Yang Comedy. I also do a weekly podcast with another actor friend of mine, Lucas Ng, where we talk about the process of making it. So within the industry. So the podcast is called "Have We Made It Yet?" And so far we've had a few guests, and I think moving forward we're going to do a lot more guests. So I mean, if any of you guys are free in the future, I'd try to get you on. But yeah, so basically we want to talk about everybody's unique stories when it comes to their approach to making it, what they view making it means. And yeah, it's a Have We Made It Yet podcast. It's available on Spotify, all the available podcasts, and it's on YouTube as well. So you could check that out.
Okay, great. Let's go over to Gina.
You can follow me on Instagram or Twitter at Gina Siva. And I generally post there whenever I have new projects coming up. So that's it.
Great. Let's head over to Veronica.
You can follow me on Instagram, sassy_la_v, the letter V. I also do storytelling, and I produce a storytelling event show. It's narratives of women of color. So I actually have one coming up in 2 weeks for Asian Heritage Month.
Sweet.
That's great. And let's end with Sebastian.
I make comedy sketches for YouTube at Sebastian D Chow, and I'm on Twitter at SpaceBastian.
Okay,
That's
great.
what I'm up to. Yeah.
And I'm your host, Vong Show. You can find me everywhere at Vong Show. That's YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, basically all the social medias. And my next project is tomorrow's episode. So tune back in. And thanks again, and have a great night. And thank you for listening.